I won 9-0 in the PTI. I didn't even drop a game.
How did you get an edge over those pros at those tournaments?
Knowing losing situations and winning situations and how to get to them is the most important thing.
What kind of mistakes are worth avoiding when you start out?
A big step up is when you're able to make bad hands into good hands. Drafting is a good way to learn multiple assets of the game too, because there's generally not only one way to draft.
Welcome to Draw 4, where I draw 4 with the best Flesh and Blood players. Today I'm talking to Jimmy, who won the recent PTI event at the Battle Hardened Wallonia. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm super stoked to talk to you because actually you are pretty new to Flesh and Blood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So since when are you playing?
I've only started playing in Outsiders, basically. Not that long.
Yeah, exactly. And we will talk about how you as a new player emerged in Flesh and Blood and how you found your way. But also we want to talk about, for new players who watch this video, how can those players find their own way to get some wins at a local tournament, or even, like you did it at the PTI event, compete with some of the best players in the world. So we will reveal 4 topics here, and you can dive into them in detail.
All right.
Jimmy, at first, let's start talking about your origin in Flesh and Blood. How did you start to play Flesh and Blood, and did you play a TCG before Flesh and Blood?
So yes, I played TCGs before Flesh and Blood. Like, I first started with Hearthstone when it first came out, and quickly moved to a physical card game, aka Magic. I had a cousin who played, and he showed me how to play, and I kind of got hooked for a while. But I never really played competitively for that game because there was not that many tournaments around me. And being in Canada, everything is super far, and it was kind of harder to get to tournaments. I think I did maybe 2 GPs for Magic, and that's pretty much it. And then I stopped playing mostly because of COVID, and kind of never went back to the game after. And I think I picked up Legends of Runeterra in between at some point too. And yeah, and then I started playing Flesh and Blood because of, well, 2 persons. I had a friend of a friend who played and told me that there was a nice competitive scene in Montreal, so I was kind of interested in playing. And I've heard about it a lot from actually Majin Bay, who because I listened to his podcast of Runeterra. So that's pretty much why I started playing the game, or how I picked it up.
In the beginning, how easy was it for you to pick up the game and find your way as a new player?
It was actually pretty hard because I like playing combo decks, and I decided to start playing Kano and CC, which was not a good idea. Because learning the game with Kano is not, like, learning the deck is okay, you can do it if you put a lot of effort. But the hard part was learning other people's deck with Kano is not great. Really not great at all, because you don't get to see most of the deck. The play patterns are completely different because it's kind of its own thing. And I had a hard time in like the first month or 2, I guess. And then I switched to a deck that I thought was going to have more interaction, which was Katsu, and I was able to learn a lot with it because I had way better trading patterns with that deck than with Kano, so it just helped learn the game. Having more interaction, etc., learning to block, and all of those Flesh and Blood things.
When was the moment that you thought, man, Flesh and Blood, that's the game for me?
Oh, literally the first time I played. The first time I played, I drafted, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I don't like draft from other games normally. And I really enjoyed Flesh and Blood's draft and just the gameplay in general, so I immediately got hooked after like 1 draft.
Tell us a little bit more about that moment when you got hooked about Flesh and Blood.
Well, it's just the way that the game plays, the fact that, especially in draft, that the bombs are less impactful in that game. The fact that you all often see your whole deck, or at least most of it, especially in draft. I like the fact that every pick that you made was impactful, and I just felt like it really transitions well into Constructed too, where everything you do is super impactful, pitch stacking is interesting, but seeing your whole deck feels so good when you think about it, because your deck construction is super important. And when you decide to sideboard, you're always going to see your sideboard. You're always going to see everything. It might not come at the right time, but you always have a chance to do something. And like, all the games are super close, generally speaking. which is something I really enjoyed. It's very rare that you end up winning without losing a health point or barely losing a health point. There's always a back and forth. There's also a chance for someone to get back in the game, which is really cool. For both, when you're winning, you can't be sloppy. You have to stay clean. You have to play perfectly, because it's easy for your opponent to just poke a hole in your plan and just like oops, suddenly you're on the back foot and suddenly you're losing, you lost tempo, or a plethora of things.
So it wasn't easy though to find the right spot for you as a new player in this game. What were the hard parts in the first few weeks or month even that you played the game?
For me, it was really learning what people are playing. So learning what my opponents were, what cards they were playing, and it's really hard to play around something that you don't know exists. And the hardest part I feel like for every card game actually is when you start a new card game, you don't know what cards exist. That's it. So that's the biggest burden I feel like to starting any card game.
So how did you get over the first hurdles when starting the game then?
Oh, I just played a lot. I just went to a bunch of armories because we were lucky to have up to almost 5 or 6 armories per week. So I just played like, at first I played maybe 2 or 3 just to actually learn the game, to know what people were playing. I read a bunch of I looked at deck lists, looked at winning tournament deck lists. I'm not that big a fan of watching videos of people play, but I really like just looking at deck lists to see, okay, this card exists. I need to play around that when I like it. And like just reading those lists helped me so much to start learning to play the game in general too.
And before we started recording, you told me that Flesh and Blood is your main hobby and the thing you look forward to in your free time. How did that develop? Like, was it right from the beginning, or was there a moment in time where you thought, I want to take all of my free time into this?
I'm a pretty competitive player, so the second that I realized I really liked the game, it really didn't take long. I almost immediately got hooked and started playing like multiple times a week. Like after maybe a month of playing, I was doing 3 armories a week at least. All that because I really enjoyed the game. I just wanted more chances to play the game, more chances to just also speak with people. I love the in-person TCG aspect, which it's super fun for me to go out, see people, make friends, make contacts, etc. It's super fun.
You also played other games before. Yeah. You already told us that. What makes Flesh and Blood so different to those games for you?
A big part of it is also the pacing for Flesh and Blood. I feel like you often don't have anything to do. Like it's really rare that like in a turn cycle you're always going to be blocking or going to be attacking. You're always thinking, and I feel like games like I really like that over games like Hearthstone because I don't like having to wait up to 1.5 minutes every turn cycle. I like that there's always a nice back and forth, really. And really looking at seeing your whole deck is so interesting to me.
We will also touch on a deck that you play in one of the coming topics. But before we come to that, is there anything like a special moment in your first kind of weeks or month that you played the game that you want to share with the viewers? That made like the view that you have on the game shaped it really?
For me, again, I think it was really when I started drafting the game. That's what really hooked me, because like the importance of the picks, the realizing how games were gonna play is what really made me get hooked into the game. Like I know I've said it multiple times now, but like the seeing your whole deck just like makes every decision so important. That's what that really got me hooked to the game. Like the skill ceiling of the game too, and the skill floor even. Just like the fact that decisions really do matter in this game.
And just to give the viewers a little bit more depth on your story, you started out in playing multiple events per week at your locals, but then you also traveled a far distance from Canada over to Europe for the World Championship. Tell us here how that felt for you. You already said that you are a really competitive player.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was super cool. Like I didn't expect also while starting the game to be able to get there so quickly, because in only a few months, almost a whole year now, I guess, getting there is I find it kind of impressive in some way. Like I'm really happy about what I was able to accomplish, and I didn't do super well at Worlds. I did manage to make day 2, but then day 2 started pretty badly with with the draft, but I was really happy to just be there and be able to play, see really good players, talk with really good players, was really amazing.
Let's continue then to talk about your travels in Flesh and Blood later on. But the second
Okay.
topic that I want to talk with you about is the time that you discovered your main hero, Katsu. Tell us about how that felt for you. You started out on Kano, but now Katsu is your main hero.
Okay, so the way I started playing Katsu wasn't even, oh, I see the hero, I really want to play it. I was really torn between picking up either Yuzuri or picking up Katsu, and it almost ended up with a coin flip. The way I chose the hero. I ended up at Katsu. I'm really happy to have done so too, because it's been going very well for me. But also, I just, with more experience in the game, it's really a play style that I enjoy a lot. And I've revisited Yuzuri after, and I'm not that big of a fan of the deck, well, of the hero right now. So I got with Katsu like almost on a whim, right? And well, I'm sorry, what was the question at first? I forgot.
Yeah. So as you discovered your main hero in Classic Constructed, it was Katsu. Yeah. How did you find Katsu as your main hero, and why did you stick to Katsu for a month?
Okay, so I think I said how I found him, and why I stuck to him is I really enjoyed tutoring cards. So having, like, every turn being able to say I get to choose a card from my deck and put it in my hand, even if there's a condition, is really, really a good. It's really good, right? Tutoring every turn, and I love the consistency of being able to get specific cards that you want. And I'm a big combo player, and I play the deck as if it's kind of a tempo combo deck. So it really just it fits my playstyle perfectly.
So, what was the moment as you came to realize that Katsu is really fitting your playstyle and you want to dive deeper into him?
When I played 3 bonds in a single turn. I'm like, wow, you can do really, really broken stuff with this hero. And it just made me want to explore the deck even more. Because at first you look kind of the cards like, okay, you get to do this, and then, oh, but you get to do this. Oh, and if you have that equipment, it makes you able to do, and like there's plenty of things that just like go together and just makes for a wonderful gameplay.
So before discovering Katsu, you already knew what kind of player you are and what you needed to look out for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know I like playing combo decks in general. I like building up to something. Like with Kano, it's you're building up to a combo turn. With Katsu, it's kind of this. Well, I play it in this kind of similar way. I play it to, at some point I'm able to do a super big turn and win back tempo, or if I just have consistently decent hands, I can just maybe always have it.
For players that don't know yet what kind of hero they are looking for, do you have a tip for those players? How they can find the hero?
I feel like playing either Commoner or Blitz is a great way to do it, and just playing budget version of a bunch of decks. I had the opportunity to have friends being able to lend me decks. So when I first started, like at first in Blitz, before even buying cards, like I maybe did 2 or 3 armories where they just lent me decks and I could test out playstyles, which was really interesting to me because I got to see what other people like, kind of the face of pretty much most of the archetypes.
Yeah, because it is a really different thing when just looking at the design of a hero from outside and then actually getting to play with the real cards and seeing like how the playstyle actually is made. Exactly. Why are you such a combo player? Where did you discover that?
Well, I discovered it with Magic at its base, and I just enjoyed playing combo things. Doing kind of wacky stuff or stuff that are how could I say? Like kind of breaking the game in some way, or doing something that's better than the average. Like, yes, you can just play your things on rate, like normally on without like, let's say you play 2 for 6. It's a 2 for 6. That's it. But how can you make that card be a bigger value? A good example for me with Katsu is you can transform bad cards into good cards by playing it in a certain way, like by threatening something that your deck lets you do. Like Kano's a bit of that way too. Like, let's say their main spell, it's not placing Ether, I always wish it's Aether Wildfire. Like on its face, it doesn't look super suspicious until they do the super big combo, and once you know it, you know what to watch out for. And you can kind of like in the deck like Katsu, since you have multiple starters, you're able to use those to bait a bit your opponent into not knowing what you're gonna do, and doing really broken stuff if they just let you do whatever you want.
And how was it for you to then jump from the local scene up to a tournament like the World Championship or the Battle Hardened and Wallonia with your favorite hero Katsu?
I was really happy because it went well, and it's always fun when a tournament goes well. Well, at least for the constructed portion. So in some way, it's like, oh, I'm actually good with this hero. It's not just a fluke. It's not just, oh, I've been beating the locals who just play for fun and aren't looking to be competitive. Which, if I play 5 times a week sometimes, and they play once a week, of course I'm gonna win this game. I played 5 times more than them at that point. It was like, oh, I'm actually able to win against really good player. That's fun. I'm happy. I'm really happy that I have it's a kind of way to prove myself in some way.
And you also not only discovered Katsu as your main hero, but you also stick to Katsu. So you have a lot of work that you put into this hero and a lot of knowledge in the matchups. When was the turning point as you started to play Katsu, but then realized on okay, I'm now getting so much experience with this hero?
Well, when I started, for the RTNs, I played Katsu for 2 weeks at first, and I somehow top 8'd all my RTNs. I was like, oh, I might have just gotten lucky, but the Pro Quest season right after, I top 8'd all my Pro Quest 2, all playing Katsu basically, and I'm like, okay, I think I think I have a good deck. I think I'm in a good spot. I'm playing actually against good players and people who are trying to play competitively, so I felt really good at that point after on Katsu.
With Katsu not being one of the S tier heroes back in the last month, how did you feel when going into the meta and then discovering all this experience is paying off, even though Katsu is not one of the most favored heroes?
Oh, for me, the second, well, not the second, but after playing it for a while, I actually felt that Katsu was close to S tier, even though it wasn't represented that way. I didn't necessarily agree on how most people built the deck, so playing it also the way that I play it and the way I've built it, I felt like the deck was a lot better than what most people were doing with it. Because a lot of people were playing the deck more as an aggressive deck and less as a, and I played as a mix between tempo and combo.
But for all Katsu players that are viewing this video, are there any things that you can give them along the way to getting more skills in with Katsu?
For me, it's a big step up is when you're able to make bad hands into good hands. So there's way of sequencing that you can make hands that do absolutely nothing into forcing your opponent to give you 2 cards because you can represent stuff without actually having it. Let's say you have a hand with no 0 cost, so you can't trigger Katsu. Well, your opponent doesn't know. So when you're going to attack with your 1 for 2, they might be incentivized to block because it can represent up to 8 more damage if it hits. So the ways of making those awkward bad hand to steal a card or 2 from your opponent is a big step up with the deck.
All right, so we will also talk about your way at the Battle Hardened and at the World Championship, so maybe we can dive into that a little bit more in detail soon. Before we jump into the next topic though, is there anything you want to give away for viewers that are still discovering the game and still are on their way to finding their main hero in Classic Constructed?
Like I said, just try the game. Drafting is a good way to learn multiple assets of the game too, because there's generally not only one way to draft. So drafting is a great way to just learn the game in general. And what I like about draft is that you if you just look at you learn a set, you can kind of get over the burden of not knowing every card because you just need to know one set, and then you get to learn the game easier, and you're on a more equal footing, I feel like, compared to people who've been playing for a while. If you put effort into it, obviously.
All right, yeah, I think that's a really good way for new players to discover the game. And let's jump now to the third topic. And that is actually how the Battle Hardened in Wallonia went for you, but also, as you said, you were also playing at the World Championship.
Yeah.
How did you get an edge over those pros at those tournaments with Katsu?
I don't know if I would say that I got an edge. I think I just played really cleanly and was able to do good games of Flesh and Blood. And when you play cleanly, generally you're able to abuse small mistakes that your opponents are going to do. And I think that's staying calm, taking my time, and just not thinking about the fact that I'm in a big tournament. So I approach each game one at a time. I'm not playing in the World Champion. I'm just playing my game. That's it. And like being able to just focus in the moment, I think helped me actually win those games.
And are there any specific games that you want to tell us more about? Because I also talked to Brody Spurlock, and he was really telling me that you were on fire in that tournament, and you also played 3 times against him, right?
Yeah, I did. Well, during the weekend, I played once in the Super Armory. I played him also in the BH and then in the PTI. Our game in the semifinals of the PTI was super, super close. It was a really interesting game, but it's the type of game that was so intense that after the fact, it's so hard to remember the whole game because I was so focused in the moment, about what was happening exactly. And when it's a stressful game, I often just it gets blurry in my mind in some way after the fact. But that game was really amazing. It was one of the closest game of football I've ever played. And I'm sorry if I can add onto it.
Yeah.
For that game, an interesting part is I had a lot of times, especially in the end game, to choose not to play around stuff, which is the reason I won that game. I knew that at some points I lose to those cards, and playing around those cards, certain cards, I just lose. So I had to. That's maybe one of the highlights for me of that game, like realizing what I can do and how I can win the game, and playing to my outs in some way.
Are there any specific cards that you want to mention here to get more details on for the viewers?
Well, it was simple. I was at 4 health, and I knew often I just played as if he had an arcane, a card that dealt 4 arcane, I just die. I knew 4 arcane plus Waning Moon, so I chose just not to play around those because I knew how many had passed, I knew which one he had pitched, and that's pretty much it. I just chose to say if he has it now, I lose, but if I play around it, I just lose anyways. So I have to not play around it. And realizing that in the moment, which is sometimes super hard, helped me out a lot.
So Flesh and Blood is not only about knowing your combos and knowing the cards that your opponent plays, but also these kind of mind games that you are in, especially with heroes like Katsu or Icelander.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of information that you don't have access to, and knowing what to play around is really important.
Yeah, how did the World Championship with Katsu went for you?
I ended up 6-2 for the CC portion, and I did 2-3-1 for draft. So I started the tournament off 5-2 after day 1, and I 0-3'd my draft on day 2, which will cost me pretty much the tournament. But yeah, so it went super well for CC. My only 2 losses were pretty much out of my control, which is not fun, but at the same time, I'm happy about not having done big misplays. It went pretty well. I beat 2 Icelanders, I think, which a lot of people were saying it's a bad matchup, but I feel comfortable into the matchup. So I was happy to see that I was able to beat really high caliber Icelanders. And yeah. So it went well. I was really happy with it.
So even though we are not looking at your deck list here, what made your CC portion so strong when building the deck for the World Championship?
For example, for the Icelander matchup, I played Erase Faces. I played Erase Faces, which is not a card that a lot of people have been playing into the matchup, or people have tested it and not liked it. But for me, it just turned out that it went super well in my game plan. And I feel like that's a card that really helped me in the matchup. And also sometimes it's just you get good matchups, right? You get good pairings, and you just that's how it goes. So for my, I think I took down notes of what I played. So I played mostly 50-50 matchups and even some slightly unfavored ones during Worlds. I played 2 Icelanders, was just slightly unfavored, and I played 2 Bravos, and the rest was I played against Dromai, which is it's not free, but it's pretty easy. And I played twice against Phi, which I won the die roll, which is 75% of the way there.
So going forward, we don't have Icelander anymore in the meta. I assume you will stay on Katsu, right?
I wanted to try out Azalea a bit. There's interesting builds with New Horizon and Great Bow that really interest me. But like I said, I didn't have time to try it out before Worlds, or at least put a good amount of time into it before Worlds. So I couldn't even give it a chance or have it in my radar for testing. For play.
So how will you try then to leverage on your experience that you gained in this year with Katsu or going into the next meta?
Well, I think I'm going to be able to build a deck that's going to be that's going to be at least well positioned in the meta. And if I'm not, I'm just going to hop on another deck. Like, I'm not playing Katsu because I absolutely want to play that deck. It's so happened that I love the deck, and I felt like it was well positioned. So I'm not someone who just wants to play that deck at all costs, right? I'm happy hopping on another deck. But I'm also someone who really likes to put a lot of time into one deck. So if I decide to play, let's say, Zelia for the next competitive season, I'm probably sticking with it for most of the year.
So it is important that to stay open because the meta will shift and also the likings of every player may shift too. You are open for that, like you said, but when do you think is the moment that you want to decide on it?
So I think the most important thing about deck is being comfortable with your deck. So if I wouldn't switch to a deck that I feel less comfortable on, just because losing those small edges is what costs you a lot of game. And I don't want to go into tournaments telling myself I'm playing this deck because it beats X and Y. I don't want to have to rely on matchup roulette. I prefer being unfavored but having a good plan into a matchup, and being really happy with how I'm gonna play my deck, than being favored and maybe making slight misplays, not playing perfectly to my outs, etc. And that's something I feel like you need a lot of experience on the deck to be able to do.
And so new players should also focus on gaining experience with the hero that they are focusing on, rather than hopping onto different heroes from time to time in your experience.
In my opinion, in the first in the first month, maybe like hop around a bit, and then sticking to something is really gonna be worth it in the long run. It's just to be able to learn everything super well about the game. Just it's hard to focus on like leveling up specific parts of your game while learning a new hero every time. So once you're comfortable on a hero, it's way easier to say, "Oh, now I want to get good at pitch tracking," so you can start practicing it. Oh, and I want to be able to block always perfectly, so you're able to focus easier on other things than just playing your hero.
So I think that's a really interesting part for new players, because it can be quite intimidating when you see all of these different decks, all of these new heroes, and you are kind of lost in it because maybe you don't even know if you are a combo player or if you want to go fatigue style or whatever. But then you discover like it piece by piece, I guess. And I think you are a really good example for that, sticking to Katsu for such a long time and then it paying off after you gained all this experience.
Also, draft really helps to figure out what you want to play, because there's multiple facets of it and you're able to touch everything while still learning at the same time and not being overwhelmed.
So also when you entered the game, Outsiders was the main set, and it kind of made you discover Katsu, I think, right?
Oh no, I didn't. I don't think I drafted.
All right,
that's
interesting.
I never drafted. Yeah, I maybe drafted it once or twice after I started playing more, but like when I first played Outsiders, I never drafted Katsu.
That's interesting.
I drafted Benji once, though. I think a skirmish or something. Or yeah, the top 8 of a skirmish, I think I drafted Katsu, not Katsu Benji, but I never played Katsu, yeah.
So in draft, it was rather you exploring all the different parts of the game and then driving towards a hero that you found interesting in your playstyle.
I didn't decide because of draft, if that's what you meant. Yeah. I just draft helped me learn, like, see what was like. Also playing against people when you know the cards helps a lot, because I saw how people built their deck, saw how people just did their thing, and it's easier in draft when you know all, like, you get to know all the cards.
All right, maybe we'll see new players with the next set, heavy hitters, discovering all the new parts of it and then driving towards one of those heroes. Before we switch to yes, that's right.
The new set looks really interesting. I love the dual class aspect of the game. I love draft. I'm sad that I haven't gotten to draft Outsiders more competitively. I just got to do Monarch and which one was the current set? Evo. I have Evo in my hand. Bright Lights.
Bright Lights. You are really looking forward to gaining more experience in the game with heavy hitters being on the line.
Yeah, I do. I really want to step up my draft game. Like, especially after it not going well at Worlds, I'm even more excited to get better at draft.
I think that's also pretty astonishing when you enter the game as a new player. Depending on from where you come, you know draft or not. But
Yeah.
as a Flesh and Blood player, you need to be good at not only playing a pre-constructed deck, but also being good at the draft part. And how was it for you to discovering that? Because you also needed to get an edge on both parts. And as you said, draft is not something that you could shine on at the World Championship.
Well, I've never really drafted most times in other games. I did not enjoy draft in, let's say, Magic or other cards games I've played. I play a lot of board games too, which a lot of board games have draft aspects in them. I like the idea of draft, but it's so hard to get good at draft. And like a reason why it didn't really go well for me at Worlds was because people were not didn't have the same value of cards that I did in my playtesting. So like cards weren't picked at the same priority, and it kind of really completely destabilized me. So I ended up like some point in the pod we were 4 tech low, and I felt like after 1.5 packs, I thought we were 2 to give you an idea.
All right, so I'm really interested when the new set comes then to talk to you again about the draft portion and how it will go for you.
Oh, thank you.
So let's close out the topic with the Battle Hardened Wallonia on you actually winning the PTI event on the end of the weekend. Tell us more about that and how it felt for you.
Oh, well, it felt amazing. Like having the win is kind of surreal in some point because it's like the biggest event I've won up until now, and it's also my first PTI, which I'm super happy to just see the number next to the PTI go from 0 to 1 is super fun. No, it felt really good. I was super happy, and also just closing out my trip to Europe with a win just feels good. It's just fun. Like I end up on also I won 9-0 in the PTI. I didn't even drop a game, so it felt super good to get in that position, especially after like losing immediately in the quarters of the BH and not getting any real win from the I didn't win. Oh, actually, I got a playmat from the BH Living Legend, and besides that, I didn't really win anything from the Worlds weekend. So having like a solid win feels good.
I'm not sure yet if I understood that right. You also played the Battle Hardened at the World Championship?
Yeah, the Living Legends, Battle Hardened.
And how did you place there?
I went 6-1. I think I finished 20 something.
Oh, okay. And you got a playmat for that one?
Yeah, top 32 got random Battle Hardened playmat. I was able
nice.
to. I randomly got the Starvo weapon and was able to trade it for someone who got a Kodachi. So I was super happy to get that.
That's perfect. Nice.
Also, I played Katsu in that tournament too.
Really?
Yeah. But I got super lucky. I faced 6 prisons. I literally beat all the prisons.
That's amazing.
My mashups into Starvo didn't go super well, but I felt like it was a part of variance because both games. Well, I only played twice against Starvo. I lost both, but both games were super close. And like one was losing to Awakening, and the other one was losing to Pummel. So
yeah. Oh man, that's an interesting part. I didn't even think about that. But when you enter the game as a new player, and in your case, you discovered Katsu. You played Katsu at the Battle Hardened, and Wallonia, you played Katsu at the World Championship. But then you were also able to pilot Katsu into the first Living Legend Battle Hardened. That's super cool.
I was gonna play Fi at first, and I kind of convinced myself to play Katsu. And one of the main reasons was, if I play Fi and I do well, I'm not even gonna have fun. I'm just gonna be playing Fi and doing well. If I play Katsu and do well, I'm gonna be ecstatic. And like if I somehow manage to top 8, I'm gonna be super happy. So just the idea of being the possibility of doing that was just what got me to play Katsu in the end.
Oh man, it's super amazing. So is there a story or a moment of the Battle Hardened in Wallonia at the PTI event that you want to share with us to close out this topic?
Well, I have a match on camera for that Battle Hardened, but I don't think they've released the footage yet. So there's that match which was super interesting. We ended up drawing because we just didn't have the time to finish the game, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, there wasn't really a super like a big moment for it. Like if I would have beaten Starvos, maybe, but in that situation, since I ended up losing to the deck, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can win those matchups and just still lose it. It kind of felt a bit like I just got lucky with matchups in the end. Like 6 Prism out of 9 round is a lot. And I beat the
That's
only
true.
Oldhim round 1.
Oh my god.
I played Vambrace of Determination just for Oldhim and Prism, and it ended up being and also Starvo, so I ended up using it all 9 matchups. I did not face one aggro matchup, which I really wanted to face too, just because I wanted to try the matchups. But that's the tournament I didn't have time to practice. Obviously, I was more aiming for Worlds, so.
So then let's go on to the last topic, and that is actually what kind of mistakes, looking back at the beginning in Flesh and Blood for you, would you say that are worth avoiding when you start out?
Looking at the game too much on a mat base might be a mistake I did at first. Like, let's say you're getting someone attacks you for 15 and your hand can only present 12. Even if, like, mathematically that's the right thing to do, sometimes you want to take the damage just to, like, oh, you can maybe, like, especially when I get a like Katsu, I can maybe still steal a card or two from my opponent's hand, even if I'm presenting less. And you're, like, the fact that you know your opponent is presenting 15. I don't know how much, he doesn't know how much I'm presenting. So, being able to bluffs and somewhat helps a lot too, I think, with that. Like with both Kano and Katsu, it's something that I feel like is relevant.
So you also had success in local tournaments like the Road to Nationals or ProQuest season. But let's imagine there is a player who struggles to get wins in. And he wants to like jump around and tries out different decks, but don't want to focus on it. How did you get the energy to stick to Katsu and get all these really important experiences in?
Well, finding a hero that you really enjoy helps. But also, I know that I'm someone, especially when playing Magic, that I hopped around a lot of decks, and I made that mistake of never sticking really to a deck. Like, I stuck to decks for like a couple of months every time, and it really cost me at multiple points. But like, when I do a mistake with a deck, I really feel it in my soul. Like, I'm not happy with myself, so I'm super hard on myself. So it really helped me to just say, okay, I'm gonna play this until I don't make mistakes. And I still do make mistakes. Everyone does. But how can I say? If as long as I find something that helps me learn, I'm gonna be happy to play the deck. The second I stop learning with a deck, that's when I kind of lose interest with it. So if you finish a game and you're like, and you realize that, or you think yourself, I lost this game and I make no mistakes, and that happens often, there's something wrong. You need to change something. Because you're making mistakes. Everybody does. Like, the best players in the world are gonna make mistakes, and that's how you learn. You can't learn if you're not making mistakes. Like, I guess realizing what mistakes you're making and trying to fix them it's a good approach to try to like level up your game.
Matchups are pretty key in Flesh and Blood because it can really vary how your game goes depending on the hero or the strategy that you are facing. So is there something you can share with new players to get better at certain matchups?
For specific matchups, I think the most important thing is to have a plan. So to know how you can win this game in order to be able to play to those outs. And you need also to know how you lose those games. Knowing losing situations and winning situations and how to get to them is the most important thing. So a good example with Katsu is if my opponent has 1 health and I have a slight health lead, I get to always take 2 cards off 1 card. Because Kodachi. Well, knowing how to always, like, knowing when to use, let's say if I, with Breaking Skulls and Katsu, if my opponent is at 2, or I put my opponent at 2 with a 0 for 4 or something that has combo, well, I want to use my Breaking Skulls because I want him to be at 1 so I can always take him 2 cards. I don't know my next hand, but that's the safe space to do, the safe play to do. Like, knowing how to get to those situations and, like, when to do, what can I say? Well, just how to get to those, I guess.
And are there any other mistakes that you, maybe even mistakes that you make nowadays that you can share with other players starting out on the game to avoid?
Yeah, actually, don't make cute plays. Like, plays that like, oh, this is super cool, sometimes just don't work out. Oh, if this happens and this happens, oh, it's gonna work. And most of the time it doesn't. Your opponent's probably gonna see through it. So, like, trying to do, like, I call them, like, cute plays, I guess. is something that I think is good to avoid.
So I even remember these moments myself. Like, I play Bravo from time to time, and I really like throwing off a Crippling Crush, but it's not really good to throw off the Crippling Crush every time. So maybe there's something like that you can share over with Katsu.
If Katsu has a big part that's bluff, and sometimes when it just doesn't work out. Like play the safest play over trying to bluff for no reason. I guess would be the best thing to do. Like I don't play Razor Reflex. I'm not gonna bluff that I have a Razor Reflex because I can. Even if my opponent doesn't know I don't play it. Like not doing stuff like that, I guess.
So let's then, now that we have talked about the 4 main topics for today, let's imagine you have another tip lying down in your arsenal and that you can reveal to the viewers. Is there anything to give away here at the end?
Honestly, when you're playing, try to have the most fun you can, because if you stop having fun, that's when you just become frustrated with variants, and that's the big part of it, I feel like. Yeah. So that's a big thing. Like we're playing a card game, there's variants, there's randomness, and trying to have fun helps a lot to negate those things.
So how do you stay on top to having fun in Flesh and Blood?
For me, I'm someone who loves math, so when I'm unlucky, I have fun, like just calculating how unlucky I was. What are the odds of this happening? And it kind of takes the edge off in someone like, wow, I'm really unlucky, and it helps just power through it in some way.
Right, that's amazing. I've never heard of someone doing that, but I can imagine you sitting there and doing it. All right, Jimmy, we will close the sharing now. Jimmy, I think it was really amazing to talk to you about your experiences on how you entered Flesh and Blood, but also traveling over to Europe and winning the PTI event at the Battle Hardened Wallonia. And one moment I will surely remember is you telling me now that you also played Katsu in the Battle Hardened at the World Championship and beating all the prisms. That's super amazing.
I got so lucky on that.
I have a question here. Did you also play against Fino?
Yeah, that's the person I played on camera.
Oh my god, nice. Shout out to you, Fino. All right, Jimmy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And we will see us in the future.
Yes, well, I hope.
All right, to all the viewers who are listening to this episode, make sure to like the video for Jimmy's efforts and his amazing accomplishment at the PTI event at the Battle Hardened Wallonia, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more.